What is going on, everybody? Travis Fowler Harkrider is back once again this week with another edition of Tights and Turnbuckles. So you know what time it is. Let's talk pro wrestling, because this week was another paint by the numbers type of week. It wasn't like there was a whole lot of spectacular things that went on, but the stuff that did catch my eye, a lot of it didn't really require in-ring work. Granted, there were some great in-ring performances on Dynamite, SmackDown. I can't really say that I remember much about Raw this week. And it's not because it was a bad show necessarily. I just think the most important aspects aren't the in-ring quality at times. And this is one of those weeks where that's what it felt like. It felt like another building up momentum to go into whatever the next program is. For the Raw side, sorry about that, I just bumped my camera a little bit. For the Raw side of things, they were leading towards next week's show, which is, of course, taking place tomorrow night. And that would lead for a main event of Jey Uso versus Braun Breaker for the Intercontinental Championship. And a lot of people are actually really stoked about this match. And they feel like this is the time to put the IC belt on Jey Uso for his first singles title. And honestly, I understand the argument, but I don't think it's going to happen. I still think they are wanting to get more out of Braun Breaker's title reign, so I don't really think that that's in any jeopardy, but I could be wrong. Maybe this could lead to an ongoing program between Uso and Breaker, because it does feel like there's some legs here to kind of really tell a great prolonged story. I would say at least till Survivor Series. Like, if there really is going to be a OG versus new bloodline war games, which everybody's speculating that that's what we're heading towards, you're going to have to put Jey Uso in there. But do you have him walk in as the Intercontinental Champion? You could potentially pull off a storyline where you have him defend the title early in the night and then he has to pull double duty for his family. That is a possibility. Do I think they'll go that route? I don't think so. I really just don't think Jay's going to get the title, even though I personally wouldn't mind him winning. He is on fire as a character. Like, nobody hates Jey Uso. He has got the perfect momentum right now, and he's actually got some pretty cool new merchandise over at WWE Shop. I actually really want one. But I digress and move forward. Dynamite was another thing where I have to say that the things that caught my attention wasn't necessarily the in-ring stuff. Hangman Page's promo. Guys, this dude is coming into his own. Like, this whole new deranged dark version of Hangman is working. I enjoy it thoroughly. And honestly, I'm surprised that they are continuing the Jeff Jarrett story with him. I would have thought they would have tried to blow that off at All In. Most people wanted that. But here we are. We're fast forwarding now that apparently this will be a lumberjack strap match coming up this Wednesday on Dynamite, when the last outlaw Jeff Jarrett takes on Hangman Page. And I really think this is going to be a fun watch, especially with Jarrett involved, who's had his history with strap matches, bunkhouse matches. A lot of those old school Southern wrestling gimmicks are right up his alley, as well as Hangman Page. We've seen what he can do in Texas Death matches, as well as some other hardcore elements. This one isn't exactly in the realm of that type of match, but with no disqualifications and a leather strap, and yeah, you've got lumberjacks out there, but who's to say that you can't hit weapons involved outside of just the strap? More than likely, I think that's what we're going to see. I could almost guarantee at least one guitar shot, hopefully from Jarrett to Hangman, but that's just a personal preference for me. The main event of Dynamite really saw a good showing for the six-man. I got to admit, though, I'm not really excited for the Young Bucks taking on Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay for the tag belts next week. I am looking forward to the Ricochet Ospreay match for the international title taking place 1 week from Wednesday, but I don't know. I kind of feel much like everybody else that maybe they're pulling the trigger a little too fast on this one. At the same time, people want this match. So I get it. You're giving your audience what they want, especially since we've got some apparent news that could potentially be announced sometime this week. Maybe there's still some kinks being worked out, but we'll get to that here in just a little bit. The Hangman stuff is what really stuck out to me on Dynamite. The Chris Jericho Orange Cassidy match, it's whatever for me. Honestly, I wish I could say that there was a lot about Dynamite that really stuck out for me. It didn't. And it's not a dig at AEW. It's just I wasn't really enjoying a whole lot of what I saw this week. That's not saying that they have a bad show. It just wasn't really catching my eye or my attention as much as it should outside of the two things that we've already mentioned. SmackDown was kind of the same. Not really a whole lot that I remember much about that show, except the opening match of Andrade and LA Knight was a really hot opener. I really enjoy when we kind of go back to the old school method of doing a match at the beginning of the TV show as opposed to a promo, because that was just endless. Every single week we could figure out the formula of promo opens the show, then you get some matches with other promos in the middle, and then your main event, whatever that may be. Sometimes it would be a promo, sometimes it would be a segment, depending on whatever the storyline called for is what we got. I will say for SmackDown, I know that's not everybody's cup of tea. However, I really did enjoy the Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes brokering deal, I believe is what they called it on YouTube. The face-to-face was really fun, and I enjoyed it. I didn't get to hear too much of the actual dialogue. I was at the dinner table with my fiance and our daughter, just watching it, trying to listen to it. But when you've got a 3-year-old, it's kind of hard to really hear some of the details. So overall, though, I caught the main premise of what this meeting was about, and I am totally here for it. I have an opinion when it comes to Cody and Roman that I'll get to discuss towards the end of the show. It's one of those things that I've seen talked about recently. I've had a conversation amongst my wrestling friends about this, and I stand firm behind the opinion. So stay tuned for that. If you're new to this, I hope you are already enjoying this, or if you want to go back and check out some of the older podcast episodes right here on YouTube, feel free to do. They're in the podcast playlist. Hopefully you have hit that subscribe button by now. If not, please go ahead and do so, because it really does help out the channel more than what you will understand. And we are on the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, X, if you want to call it that too, whichever one you want to call it by, Instagram, TikTok. We are doing great on all platforms. We are getting fan engagement, which I very much appreciate and enjoy. I love being able to talk to many wrestling fans. This is a community, and it's so much fun. I have always enjoyed pro wrestling at this point in my life. I can safely say that I can pretty much call myself a lifelong wrestling fan. I started watching when I was 4, and I'm going to be 34 here in a couple weeks. I think you can do the math on that. So, but hey, let's talk about some backstage stuff, because this was actually a week that had a lot of backstage interest. It had to deal with a lot of deals as well as time slots or time lengths of shows, however you want to approach that. We'll talk about the announcement, or at least the report, I will say. There's been nothing formally announced, but there was a report from WrestleVotes, who, as I've stated before, I put a lot of stock behind WrestleVotes. They do some great reporting. They normally never miss when it comes to what they report. And there was a rumor that had surfaced as part of their reporting that Raw and SmackDown would both be 3 hours next year. And this came off the heels of a rumor that SmackDown was actually going 3 hours on USA, while Raw basically would do 2 hours. Some argued that you could do 3 hours in like a 2 hour, 30-minute session, or 2:15 would actually equate to 3 hours if there was commercials involved. There was a lot going around about that. But that report has actually shifted quite a bit over the last 48 hours. There was rumors that it wasn't going to be a 2-hour show with Raw. It was indeed going to stick with 3 hours even when they move over to Netflix. There was rumors that SmackDown was not going to be 3 hours. That was just a rumor in and of itself. But then I saw something where SmackDown is going to do 3 hours for the remainder of the year. There was just a lot of ifs, whats that's not been formally confirmed by WWE in any way, shape, or form. But for myself personally, the last thing that they reported I think is the way to go. There was a report stating that SmackDown is supposed to close out 2024 in the 3-hour format. Raw would go to 2 hours, and then starting in January of 25, both Raw and SmackDown would indeed only be a 2-hour length show. I've said it numerous times, as well as many people have echoed this exact same sentiment online. 2-hour shows are just perfect for wrestling. Back in the day, I think 1 hour was actually a really good time. I can attest to that from watching the original development of NXT, not the game show version, but the version of NXT we now know, where they introduce new characters and basically create the farming facility for the stars of tomorrow. I remember that being a 1 hour show, and it was amazing. I remember saying it to multiple people that NXT was the best wrestling show in WWE's magazine clip, if you want to go that route. They were firing off rounds left and right with NXT back in the day, and they are starting to really get their feet back underneath them in this new era of NXT. But I really do think a 2 hour is a perfect time length for a wrestling show, because 1 hour kind of leaves you wanting more, which is what you want. But I also think 2 hours just satisfies a certain spot where it's just enough wrestling where you get left with the intrigue to come back the following week if things are done right, and it doesn't feel like you were gypped on anything. I think 2 hours is a great time slot, and I hope that that is what ends up becoming the case for Raw and SmackDown. 2 hour formats are the way to go. Mercedes Moné made news in a couple different ways this past week, one of which we'll get to in a little bit, but she was even arguing that she likes the 3 hour format because it gave more opportunity for stars to really get their chance to go out and make an impression on people, maybe make an impression on backstage officials and not just fans. So I understand her thought process on that, and I get the mentality behind the 3 hour shows, but I think you really wear down the audience, as well as at certain points you struggle to make content good and relevant for your audience, and that can actually suffer a product more than anything. Or I should say suffocate, not suffer, but you get where I was going. If you're listening, you know what I'm trying to say. But speaking of television deals, AEW rumoredly has started the finalization of their new deal coming from WBD. That's right. Warner Brothers Discovery is apparently going to double down on it. There was a report that came out early last week stating that the deal was right at the cusp of being complete, and there could be a formal announcement sometime later this week if all goes as well. And the reports that we are hearing is that they are up for a 4-year deal, 3 years guaranteed with a 1-year option at $170 million, which is a great number to be offered, and rumoredly would make them profitable. But to Eric Bischoff's point, we don't know what their cost of goods sold are, so we don't know if it equates out as a great success for AEW. When you do the math on it, it evens out to about $600,000 per episode, so that's to cover everything from lights to rentals to anything you need for the show. So depending on how things fall, it could make AEW profitable, or are they still going to be working at a deficit? We don't know, because nothing's ever been formally released in regards to their financials. So either way, though, as a wrestling fan, it's great, because AEW being around is great for the product. It is absolutely fantastic that we have an alternative product that people are behind, whether they're extremists or even people like me that just love watching wrestling. I'm glad that AEW's here, because we do get a different presentation from the WWE that we basically had to sit through, and at times it was hard to do so for almost 20 years. It was absolutely hard to watch some WWE content during that time frame. But now that we have AEW, WWE's picked up their game, AEW's picked up their game. As part of that deal that we didn't talk about just yet was, how does that include Max? Well, There's been reports that came out over the last couple days that Max will be the home of AEW pay-per-views. That's right, much to the same model as what Peacock does with WWE's PLEs. That is what we're looking at for AEW and Max. Here's the fun kicker to it, though. Not only is AEW looking at still keeping the traditional pay-per-view options as a way that you can watch their events, there is a rumor that it will be a simulcast on Max, meaning they will stream the actual Dynamite show as well as whatever other show they have. I'm guessing it'll be Collision. Some feel that Rampage is going to get canceled, which I think you probably should at this point. I think Collision is your 2 show now. And if anything, Rampage should be just like a review type of show to kind of get you hyped up for the next week or even the next Collision episode. I think your main focus should be on Dynamite and Collision at this point. But the simulcast opens up another realm for them to make profits as well as to generate an audience through the streamer. So all this is great news for AEW, and congrats to them on making AEW a successful company in just its 5-year history. We've got the 5th anniversary of Dynamite coming up in another week, and it's hard to believe that it's already been 5 years, but look at what they've done in a 5-year time frame. It's been unprecedented, unbelievable, and we should all be thankful at the very least that AEW is here, because it has created another chance for a wrestling boom that we have seen over the last few years, and I think it has just capitalized tenfold. The success of WWE has been wonderful again. AEW's success is awesome, and all the other facets that come with it. TNA is becoming successful again. New Japan still has great notoriety. MLW, for God's sakes, is getting notoriety with JBL showing up as well as some other talents making names for themselves over there. The wrestling scene is just booming, and I could not be happier about it. Unfortunately, though, with a boom is always going to come some circumstances that are just heartbreaking, and one of those is the recent announcement that GCW, which by the way has also seen their own success grow over the last couple years, unfortunately, though, they will not be moving forward with one talent by the name of Zilla Fatu. That's right, the son of Umaga, who has been making a name for himself over the last year or so, will not go back to GCW. And unfortunately, by the reports that we have seen, it looks like it all has come down to money and a potential holdup from the Fatu camp. Again, just reports, nothing confirmed from either side just yet. But the rumor going around is that there was a falling out between Fatu and GCW over money, where I guess the report stated that his fee for competing and appearing was for $1,000, and then somehow that jumped from $1,000 to $4,000, and then Fatu would hold up would hold up GCW for the remaining $3,000 and threaten to not show on the show or walk out, whatever the case may be. Again, we don't know what the exact story is because neither side has been detailed themselves. Zilla Fatu's camp has not made any kind of statement. GCW has simply just said they are not going to be moving forward with any kind of working relationship with Zilla Fatu. So both sides are pretty much keeping their lips tight as to the details, but unfortunately, it just looks like that's not going to be a place that you'll see Zilla Fatu anytime soon. But now, more contract news coming out and potential free agents hitting the market. Of course, we've talked about the Motor City Machine Guns reportedly signing with WWE and going to NXT. This week, there had been rumors and then reports stating that the Lucha Brothers had definitely signed a deal with the WWE, a multi-year deal, and that the company was already making merchandise, masks, T-shirts, the works for the eventual arrival of Pentagon and his brother Rey Fenix. Then, over the last day or so, there have been new reports. I'm telling you, there was a ton of things going on over the last few days. Apparently, the Lucha Brothers are still contractually signed to AEW, and they cannot and have not signed anything legally for WWE. So, as of this moment, it appears that the Lucha Brothers are still on the AEW roster. Most people feel like, though, at this point, with as strong as these reports have been about them leaving AEW, being unhappy with their booking, and anything else in between, it's basically the inevitable that Lucha Brothers are going to be WWE bound here as soon as their AEW deals expire. However, that's not the only two free agency, I guess, well, they're tag teams, so there's four of them, but they're two teams. They aren't the only ones making news when it comes to free agents, because there was a report yesterday that came out stating that Miro had actually given his notice to AEW and requested his release from the company. Then, apparently on his Twitch channel, which we had made mention on the TikTok video we posted about it, that it being a great success, he had gotten on there and he just kind of went in with Dave Meltzer, stating that Meltzer's probably going to go to hell when he dies, like some pretty wild stuff. And I assume it's because he was one of the first ones to report that Miro had requested his release from AEW. So maybe this is him saying, hey, you still are getting the story wrong, and that's not the case. His camp has not come out and said that's what's happened. It's all a confusing situation that, quite frankly, we should be confused. We don't need to know all the details of somebody's contract workings, or who's signed, who's not signed, who's going to sign, when they're going to sign, anything like that. That's one of the things that I enjoyed about wrestling, was the surprises that came with it. You know, what was going to happen from week to week, who was going to show up on what show. All of that was what got me into wrestling. So I feel like it's okay that we don't know some details about a wrestler's personal circumstances or even professional circumstances. And right now, I think we just need to wait and see how everything plays out. Yes, we've heard the reports that so-and-so is going to show up, but I think we need to be better as fans. And let's just kind of wait it out and see what happens. Maybe the Lucha Brothers actually end up re-signing with AEW. Maybe the Motor City Machine Guns actually go to the main roster and not NXT, as some reports have indicated. Maybe Miro didn't ask for his release and he's about to get another huge push on the AEW roster. Unlikely, but it's still a possibility. So let's just wait and see what happens. Let's be fans. Let's enjoy what we get each and every week. Again, every wrestling company is on fire right now. The wrestling scene is booming. So let's just continue to enjoy this boom period. One person that I know is enjoying the boom period is none other than formerly known as Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné. She made a statement that had X buzzing earlier today, and it had to deal with a quote that she had made on a show, stating simply that she was a big fish in a small pond in WWE. I don't know how I feel about that comment, because quite frankly, I don't know if she would be the exact same success that she had been prior to signing with AEW. I don't think she would have had that had WWE not been there and given her the Sasha Banks gimmick. I really think to an extent she's kind of patting herself on the back more, and maybe this is also her just keeping somewhat kayfabe alive and not really showing who she is and being more character driven when she does these interviews. I've had that feeling before with her, so maybe this is her just being a total pro and sticking to the character. But in that same interview, she would go on to say that she was wanting to do other things and go other avenues like movies, TV shows. She went in to mention that she has an album that she's working on to hopefully come out next year. And so many things that she wanted to do, but she was shackled by WWE, so she couldn't do all those things. Being in AEW frees her up to do all of these other things, and she's really appreciated that opportunity, along with what Tony Khan has been very forthright with her, giving her these opportunities, letting her do these other things. Maybe AEW was a good fit for her, but I also think if she really does feel that she was a, quote, big fish in a small pond, she might need to reevaluate her circumstances in WWE, because I kind of am on the camp of, if it wasn't for WWE, I don't think people would even have known who you were it's very possible that she could be the same star that she was. A big name, a big star, without the WWE system and the NXT system. I just don't know if that's the case. We'll never know. That's not the way that life fell. And all we know is that it seems like Monet is in a better place and that she's having the time of her life. So as long as people are enjoying their time in pro wrestling and enjoying what they're doing, more power to them. It is just her opinion after all, and opinions are like buttholes. Everyone's got one. But the last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here today is going back to that Cody Rhodes Roman Reigns segment. And I'm not going to talk about it being trashed or anything like that, but I want to talk about something that I've felt for a while, that some people I'm starting to see are echoing that same sentiment. And it had to deal with, well, who is Roman Reigns' greatest rival? Some could argue Seth Rollins. I've seen some people argue Brock Lesnar. For me, and just my opinion alone, I really do think Cody Rhodes is Roman Reigns' best rival. He is the John Cena, Randy Orton feud for him. He is the Rock Austin for him. That is exactly what I feel Reigns and Rhodes are for each other. This is this generation's Rock Austin. This is this generation's Hart Michaels, Hogan Savage. However you want to lay it out. These are the two guys. I saw a report today, just before I started recording this week's episode, that Cody Rhodes is the most profitable athlete on Fanatics outside of any other wrestler. And that does include Roman Reigns. So it's one of those things where it's hard to argue the numbers because the fans have still been there with Cody. They haven't been as vocal as they were during his title chase, but I think that's more of a booking circumstance, not necessarily on him, because he is still doing the work that he was doing prior to getting the title. He's still doing the championship run. But Roman Reigns is also getting those same type of babyface reactions from everybody. So WWE is really getting themselves in the situation where they do once again have two great faces of the company, that being Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. Fans love both. This is going to eventually lead to another match between the two. I saw something saying that they're planning that for Saudi Arabia. Wouldn't be surprised if that does take place for the Crown Jewel event. I think it could be a great match. And at this point, I think it would be left to just one-on-one. So there's no outside interference. And that is going to be an amazing matchup. Both guys are great workers. And I do feel like they will put on a barnstormer of a match. This is going to go even further to solidify that Rhodes and Reigns is the feud of this generation. Guys, that's what I had for you this week. What do you feel about the Rhodes-Reigns feud? Do you think it is this generation's Rock Austin? If not, what is and who is Roman Reigns' greatest opponent? What do you feel about Mercedes Moné's comments? How do you feel about Raw and SmackDown potentially doing 3 hours? Would you rather them do 2? And what do you think of the AEW deal? All of these things that we've talked about, sound off on your comments down below. Make sure, again, you're following me over on X, Travis_T and ANDT. And make sure you've subscribed to this YouTube channel. Again, it really helps us out. Make sure you're following our social media accounts. I will be back, as always, next week to talk more professional wrestling. Until that time, though, you guys take care, enjoy your week ahead, and always continue to love pro wrestling.